men's bantamweight division is on fire, and argued by many as the best division in the UFC currently, alongside the lightweight division. The bantamweight division is stacked from top to bottom, with amazing talent in the top 5 all the way up to brilliant up-and-comers in the top 15. The bantamweight division has seen only 7 undisputed champions so far in its history, which have had varying levels of success in their title reigns. So let's take a look at them. This is the Fight franchise and every UFC bantamweight champion ranked from worst to best. Number 7. Cody Garbrandt, the man who arguably has the greatest singular performance and win in bantamweight history. Cody Garbrandt ranks bottom as the best champion, due to having the most unfortunate and lackluster title reign. Cody Garbrandt went on a tear in MMA, making his debut on the 29th of December 2012. He would go on a 10-fight win streak from his pro debut, and 4 years later, on the 30th of December 2016, he would face reigning champ, and at the time, the greatest bantamweight champ of all time, Dominick Cruz. After beating Garbrandt's coach and training partner Uriah Faber, Dominick Cruz was looking to keep his streak of destroying the team alpha male talent going. The two would fight in a legendary fight which would see at the time the greatest bantamweight we had ever seen get schooled by Cody Garbrandt. Garbrandt danced around the octagon and showed crisp striking to dethrone Cruz, and many fans believed this to be the future of the sport and soon to be GOAT of the division. He would face former teammate TJ Dillashaw in the co-main event at MSG and lose his belt via second round KO after almost winning the fight in the first round. He would rematch Dillashaw and lose even faster this time via first round KO. Garbrandt, since his legendary title win, has 2 wins and 5 losses. Cody Garbrandt is an amazing fighter, and to become a champion is a legendary feat, but it seems like the belt cursed him and he could never find that form that he had that night he secured the bantamweight title. Therefore, with one amazing title fight win to secure the belt and 0 defenses, and failing to secure his belt back in the title fight rematches, ranks him bottom of all the bantamweight champions. Number 6. Petr Yan. This was the man many people, including myself, thought would eventually secure the number 1 spot on this list. Petr Yan would join the UFC with so much hype and had brilliant skill and technique, and slowly worked his way up the bantamweight division. He would work his way all the way up to a fight with Hall of Famer Uriah Faber, and secured an amazing head kick win which got him all the way to the title picture. He would be paired with Jose Aldo to fight for the vacant gold as Henry Cejudo retired and vacated the belt. It would be a close first round between the pair, but slowly Yan took over the fight and eventually broke Aldo and smashed him with ground and pound to win the vacant bantamweight gold. Many people believed this was the time for Yan to take over and become the bantamweight GOAT. He would face Aljamain Sterling in his first title defense and dominate the fight, and was on the verge of defending his belt. Unfortunately for Yan, he would throw an illegal knee in the 4th round while comfortably winning the fight, which would see him lose the fight and his belt. He would win interim gold while Sterling was off, while recovering from neck surgery, by beating Corey Sandhagen in a brilliant performance. This would earn him a rematch with Sterling for undisputed bantamweight gold in a close and competitive fight, which Sterling would win in a close split decision, which some fans thought Yan won. However, since the rematch with Sterling, he has lost 2 more fights versus O'Malley and Merab. What if Yan didn't throw that knee? Would he still be champ? Would we be looking at him as the GOAT of the bantamweights? Who knows? But what we do know is Yan is a brilliant fighter, and the manner he became champ was amazing. But a lot like Garbrandt, once he secured the belt, it seems like he got cursed. However, having that extra interim title fight win and also only losing a narrow split decision in the second Sterling fight ranks him higher than Cody Garbrandt. Number 5. Henry Cejudo. Henry Cejudo did amazing at 21 years old, becoming an Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, and following this would make the transition to MMA. Once he got in MMA, he did brilliant and went 10-0, earning a title shot against Demetrius Johnson, and would get destroyed, and following this, he would lose his next fight against Joseph Benavidez. He would secure 2 following wins, and with the lack of challenges at flyweight, would be paired once again with Demetrius Johnson. He would have a war with Demetrius Johnson and would become flyweight champ in a narrow close split decision win. This would see at the time after this fight, reigning bantamweight champ TJ Dillashaw come down in weight to try and capture flyweight gold. Henry would be brilliant and defeat TJ in less than a minute and defend his belt against TJ Dillashaw, who was on EPO, which would see TJ stripped of bantamweight gold. With bantamweight gold vacant, Henry Cejudo would move up in weight to try and capture another belt against surging contender Marlon Moraes, who'd KO future champion Aljamain Sterling. He went to war with Moraes, which would see Cejudo overcome some real adversity, taking damaging leg kicks from Moraes. He would make adjustments in the second round and turn the fight in his favour. The 3rd round, Cejudo pressured a tired Marlon Moraes, breaking him with huge knees in the clinch, eventually wearing him down and getting him to the ground and beating Moraes with ground and pound to secure a brilliant win. Following this, Cejudo's next defense would be against the arguable best in the division's history in Dominick Cruz. He would face off against Dominick in a 2-round fight, which was very close, with Cruz using his pattern and footwork style and Cejudo using brilliant pressure to try and break Cruz. Cejudo at the end of the 2nd round threw a huge knee, which rocked Cruz, and Cejudo followed him to the ground to finish him with strikes, in what Cruz protested was an early stoppage. Cejudo would retire following this fight against Cruz and spend 3 years out of the sport, but would return to fight Aljamain Sterling. And after UFC 288, Cejudo unfortunately failed at his attempt to reclaim bantamweight gold in an ultra-competitive fight, which was in many people's eyes super close. Cejudo at bantamweight has only competed for gold and is 2-1 in title fights there. What let Cejudo down, he could have really built a legacy in this division after the Cruz fight, and after his recent loss to Aljo knocks him lower in these rankings. What makes it worse for Cejudo, if he racked up some wins while he was on that hot streak in his prime, he could have probably beat Aljo as he was in the form like no other after his win at UFC 249, and we could have seen him go on a streak and get the number 1 spot on this list. Number 4. Renan Barao. As cliche as it sounds, another like the previous 3 who could have been the GOAT of this division. Renan Barao started his career in MMA with a loss. From here onwards he would go on a legendary win streak with 1 no contest. He would fight in the WEC, and once the WEC was acquired by the UFC, he would join the UFC roster and secure some wins in the UFC and work his way towards a title shot. Unfortunately for Barao, Dominick Cruz would be out with an injury, and the UFC improvised and would make an interim title in which Barao would face Uriah Faber for. Renan Barao would win a unanimous decision versus Faber, which would see him secure interim bantamweight gold, and would be regarded as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Barao would be scheduled to unify the titles with Dominick Cruz, but Cruz would suffer another ACL tear. With no sign of Cruz returning anytime soon, Barao would defend his interim title. He would have an amazing fight and performance versus Michael McDonald, winning via 4th round arm triangle to defend his interim title. He would get even better after this, securing a legendary KO win versus Eddie Wineland in the 2nd round to defend his interim title once again. This saw Barao, after this fight with no sign of Cruz coming back, promoted to undisputed champion. He would be defending his now undisputed gold against the person he won interim gold against, Uriah Faber. Barao schooled Faber in a 1-round fight to defend his undisputed title and knocked out the future Hall of Famer, and Barao was proving himself as one of the best fighters in the world. Renan Barao's next defense was scheduled to be against Rafael Assunção, but Assunção would pull out due to an injury, and then a fresh-faced TJ Dillashaw would be promoted to the main event. Barao was a huge favourite who was expected to steamroll TJ Dillashaw. Instead, TJ put on one of his greatest performances over 5 rounds, KOing Barao in the 5th round, which saw Barao lose his title. Barao earned his rematch, but he would be KO'd in 4 rounds by TJ, but he was never the same after that first title fight loss. Though he never fought Cruz to find out who was the best, his willingness to defend interim gold and being an active and defending champ with some brilliant wins gets him a good spot on this list. Number 3. Aljamain Sterling. With a career in the UFC which began in 2014, Aljamain Sterling is a veteran of the UFC, and being a veteran has seen him have a storied career of ups and downs. He would have some brilliant wins in his early career, but also lose some close decision losses, but would work himself up to the biggest fight of his career versus fellow surging contender Marlon Moraes. The two fought in a 1-round bout, which saw Sterling get viciously KO'd, and it seemed like Marlon Moraes was on his way to bantamweight gold, while Sterling still had some work to do. From the Marlon Moraes loss onwards, Sterling went on a 5-fight win streak, which saw him get some brilliant submission wins and eventually earn a title shot against the champion Petr Yan. The two fought in a back and forth bout which Yan just seemed levels above Sterling, where everything Sterling tried, Yan had an answer for. In the 4th round, with Yan comfortably winning the fight, he threw an illegal knee which saw Sterling get hurt and unable to continue. This meant the fight would be a DQ, and yes, Sterling would capture the bantamweight gold in the most unique of circumstances. Sterling would take a year off to get neck surgery and would be back to rematch Yan, who in that time secured interim gold. The two fought in a battle which was a very close fight, which many fans gave either fighter 2 rounds. It all depended how everyone scored the first round. 2 judges gave Sterling the win, which meant he defended his title by the most narrow of margins. Sterling would defend his belt against former champ TJ Dillashaw, who came into the fight with a shoulder injury. TJ would dislocate his shoulder early in the fight, which meant Sterling made light work of Dillashaw and secured the 2nd round TKO. Sterling, following this fight, fought against the returning Henry Cejudo and fought in an ultra competitive fight against one of the most decorated fighters who has ever stepped foot in the octagon. Aljo fought in an ultra competitive fight which was back and forth, but his physical attributes seemed too much for Henry Cejudo to handle, which helped lead to Aljo winning a close split decision victory. Aljo has got the most wins now in bantamweight history in the UFC and is slowly creating a great title reign, and maybe if he keeps going he could eventually become number 1. What misses Aljo on the 2 spots ahead, his title victories have been winning the belt via a legal knee, a close decision win versus Petr Yan, beating a heavily injured TJ Dillashaw, and a close split decision versus Cejudo. Maybe if he finishes O'Malley and ends his hype, then it will probably see him jump up 1 spot. Number 2. TJ Dillashaw. One of the greatest bantamweights of all time and an infamous and iconic fighter who has been known for good and bad. TJ Dillashaw would lose in the final of The Ultimate Fighter Season 14. Following this loss, he would work his way up the bantamweight division, securing a 4-fight win streak and would face Rafael Assunção but lose a split decision. He would face Mike Easton and win a unanimous decision. TJ Dillashaw at this point of his career was 9-2 and was building a name for himself in the division. It would just so happen Lady Luck would be on Dillashaw's side. The previously mentioned Renan Barao was scheduled to fight Rafael Assunção, but Assunção would pull out with an injury, which then the UFC promoted TJ Dillashaw to a world title opportunity. TJ at UFC 173 was a massive underdog, but put on a masterful performance, beating one of the pound for pound best fighters in the world and knocking him out in the 5th round. From losing the Ultimate Fighter finale and being an up and coming contender to overnight becoming the bantamweight champion of the world. He would defend his title and beat Joe Soto via KO in another 5-round battle and get the KO in the 5th and final round. The next fight he would rematch the man he beat for the title, Renan Barao. This time TJ wouldn't be the major underdog, and it would show in the fight, using slick striking and varied skill to beat Barao once again, and this time he would stop him in the 4th round with a brilliant TKO. TJ Dillashaw was the real deal, with championship fights and them being fight and performance of the nights showed he was the bantamweight king, but the champ that never lost was finally back, which meant Dominick Cruz would be back from injury and ready to get the belt he never lost, and TJ was ready to show he was the best bantamweight champ of all time. Both men fought in a fight of the night in a razor close fight with the scorecards all over the place. TJ lost the very close split decision, which some people thought he won. TJ undeterred would work back up to a title fight versus Cody Garbrandt and would secure a vicious KO against his former teammate via 2nd round KO in one of the biggest cards of that year. He defended his title in brilliant fashion with a 1st round KO of Garbrandt in the rematch, but he would fail in his attempt at double champ status versus Henry Cejudo at flyweight. TJ would lose his belt being stripped due to his EPO usage in the Cejudo fight. He would have another shot at gold versus Aljamain Sterling, but would lose being compromised due to a terrible shoulder injury and be ground and powdered by Aljo, and following this loss, TJ Dillashaw would retire. TJ is a weird champ. He was a brilliant fighter with some great wins and performances and should probably be ranked the best, but his EPO usage and losing to Henry at flyweight, where he was the favourite, and his close decision loss to Cruz, if fate was on his side and he won the decision against Cruz, he would probably have went on a streak which got him ranked number 1. Unfortunately for TJ, it's just that number 1 has a resume which is worthy of the one spot in this division's history. Number 1. Dominick Cruz. For many people, the number 1 bantamweight of all time, and for many, it's unarguable. Dominick Cruz is the man in the early days who is synonymous with the UFC bantamweight title. Before the UFC had a 135-pound division, the leading promotion for smaller weight classes would be the World Extreme Cage Fighting, which is famously known as the WEC. Cruz would compete for the WEC title in March of 2007, but that was in the featherweight division against Uriah Faber and lose via 1st round submission. 2 fights later, Cruz made his bantamweight debut and would go on a 4-fight win streak. He would face Brian Bowles for the WEC bantamweight title and win the title via TKO doctor stoppage. He would defend his title twice with 2 brilliant decision victories, and when the UFC would acquire the WEC, Cruz would be promoted to the inaugural UFC bantamweight champ. He would defend his belt with some brilliant victories versus Uriah Faber, besting his only loss of his career at that time, beating Uriah Faber at UFC 132 in the fight of the night. He would then beat a man who would go on to become one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Cruz would face Demetrius Johnson, and though undersized, would beat DJ in a 5-round unanimous decision victory. From winning the WEC title, which became the UFC title, all the way to the UFC, he would secure 4 title defenses of the bantamweight world title. He would unfortunately suffer a litany of injuries, which saw him out of competition for just under 3 years, which would see him have a tune-up fight versus Takeya Mizugaki and win via 1st round KO. He would go to reclaim the belt he never lost, fighting TJ Dillashaw for bantamweight gold in an ultra competitive fight which was back and forth, in which Cruz won the narrow decision win. He had done it. After a 3-year layoff due to injuries and everything that went against him, Cruz secured back the belt he never lost. He would defend his title once again in the trilogy fight versus Uriah Faber and defend his title in amazing fashion and truly separate himself from the rest of the division. He would lose to the man who began this list in the following fight, Cody Garbrandt, and finally bring an end to his legendary bantamweight title reign. He would have a 4-year layoff and come back to fight Henry Cejudo for the title and lose via 2nd round TKO, but Cruz protested and said it was an early finish. What ranks Cruz number 1 is the combination of what he did in the WEC bantamweight division, which is what became the UFC bantamweight division. Though a very decision heavy fighter, his style and legendary victories and volume of title fight wins and fighting back from horrendous injuries earns Cruz the spot as the greatest bantamweight champion in UFC history. Did you enjoy the video? Let us know down in the comments below. Who do you think is the greatest UFC bantamweight champ of all time? Put it down in the comments below. And who is your favourite UFC bantamweight champ? Put that down in the comments below. And leave your rankings down in the comments below. Leave a like if you've enjoyed the video and subscribe for more fight content coming soon regarding MMA and boxing. We hope you enjoyed the video and we'll catch you in the next one.